I'll just give you a little bit of background to why we are here today and what we're doing here today. I always knew that this structure existed, and I used to have a habit of inviting down any friends of mine who were interested in archaeology to have a look at it, and some of them would be impressed by it, and others would say, George, there's not much there, and this sort of thing. And last spring, Shirley Clerkin, the heritage officer, and myself decided to come down and have another look at it, and Shirley was very impressed by it and said that it certainly warranted further investigation. So we made an application through Clonus Community Forum to the Heritage Council for a grant to pay for an initial archaeological survey of the site, and we were the only grant application that was successful in the whole of County Monaghan. I think there were over 30 applications, and we were the only one to receive a grant. And part of the terms of that grant were that we would do voluntary work on the site to clear it for the archaeologists, and that we would have an open day during Heritage Week. And I thought, in my innocence, we'll have an open day and I might have half a dozen people and I'll have a grand time, and I didn't foresee what was going to happen.
Party on.
200 or 300 would arrive.
Excellent.
So it's been a great success, and thank you all so much for coming. Really, to start at the beginning, we always knew that there was a castle here in Clonus. Clonus began to form as a town around about 1600. The first English soldiers to arrive here came over the hills here to the southeast around about 1587. A man called Sir Henry Duke and his retinue. And to his surprise, he saw lying below him a monastery. And he described it in his letters to Queen Elizabeth's ministers as a monastery in Macklin country, because by that stage Monaghan was not known as a county. This was Macklin country up here. One of the members of his retinue actually drew a map of what he saw when he came over the hills here, and it's quite remarkable that some of the features are still standing today. The round tower is still here. There was a large church in the round tower grounds. There was another now ruined church beside it, but the wee abbey was a roof building in 1590 when this was drawn. There was a high cross. We call these terminal or boundary crosses when they're on the outer edges of monastery precincts. This was later taken from this position and is now the market cross in the diamond in Clonus. And this building up here is occupying the site, we think when you look at the angles of it, probably the site of the present Church of Ireland church on the diamond. So Sir Henry Duke applied to the Queen for ownership of this, as you could do in those days. She granted him a lease on the monastic lands of Clonus, because the monasteries were supposed to have all been disestablished at that stage. And part of the conditions of that lease were that he build a fortified structure, a castle or a fortified house, and that he had it manned with military personnel of the English nation. We think that the very first fortification he built, that he probably constructed it up on the Motton Bailey, on the same Drumlin Hill as the Church of Ireland church. We certainly know then from documentary evidence that a castle existed on this site here around about 1640. We have the depositions of the survivors of the 1641 rising, and they state that they defended the castle of Clonus against Irish attack. They surrendered shortly afterwards, and there's a man called Aldrich named who was in charge of defending the castle here. And this could very well be the structure that he defended. We have to be careful what we say, because we still have to do a major archaeological survey of this site. But it's likely enough that the 1641 men who defended the castles fired their muskets out of these musket loops at attacking Irish coming up the slope here from the river. One other very interesting piece of documentary evidence is that there was a castle in Clonus. This is a blown up copy of the William Petty maps. They were Sir William Petty mapped Ireland between 1656 to 58. And this is his map of a blow-up of the area of Clonus here. And you can clearly see that he has marked Clonus Castle and Fort. And the castle bears not some slight resemblance to the building that we have here. And if this all works out, if this is the original structure that he drew, this is very unusual, because most of these tower houses were built to a slightly different plan. They would have a vaulted ground floor, whereas this castle is quite open on the inside. But we have to remember that the area here of Monaghan, even though Sir Henry Duke had taken over this area, a lot of the native Irish proprietors still retained their land in Monaghan. Monaghan was never a planted county, as was Fermanagh. When you go into Fermanagh, you'll see these massive big plantation castles. So it probably wasn't thought necessary to have the same huge fortifications as the planters had in Fermanagh down here in Monaghan. So that probably is why this building is slightly more modest in proportion.
So George has told you all the mapping and all of that.
Yes,
You've seen that.
yeah, that's lovely.
So what we believe we're looking at here is 2 stories anyway of the original 17th century plantation castle. Because it has architectural features that aren't normally domestic and they're not agricultural, they are defensive features that would be normally associated with a fortified house or a tower house or whatever. So just to look at this building, just to bear in mind that up to that green level there, you see the little plinth? That whole wall is buried up as far as that level. And the 1760 street that was built in front meets that now. Okay, so we believe at that stage that whole wall was buried at the back. And over on that side, there's a little bit of light coming through, but the half of the story over there is buried. So you can't see this wall from outside or most of this wall, okay? So on that wall, there's 3 of those musket slits, and there's 2 on this wall, and there's 4 here on this front elevation, and 4 on the first story of the front elevation. And those musket slits are splayed embrazured openings with a slit so that you can shoot your musket, and they're slightly splayed in slightly different directions, particularly on the front here, to allow the musketeers to have a full range of shot to defend the castle, so that when there's attackers coming, they'd be able to knock them off basically. Now, so those are what those, we believe those are. They have these big stone lintels over the top of them. See the stone lintels at the top? So there's no timber or anything in those. They're all completely stone structures. And then also here, you see this line of stones coming out on this first level. We believe that those are the corbels which supported timber joists for the floor. So there was a timber floor running across here, not a stone floor or a vaulted ceiling, but timber floor running across here. There are other stones projecting, possibly for fireplaces or other structures we don't know, or maybe for inside steps, something like that. All this has to be unravelled by the archaeologists. Also in here, which is defensive, is this doorway. So if you look at this doorway, you can see that it's not a bit grand, you know what I mean?
Yeah.
It's not ostentatious in any way. It's a very small, tight doorway, easy to defend. You're not going to, it's not a big wide opening you're coming into. You're not coming into a big grand hall or anything. Come to a very tight space with this a shallow stone arch on both sides, and it has these stone stoppers, you see just beside your head, there and there, which are part of that stone that's built into that wall. So you're not going to remove that in a hurry. And on a lot of these fortified tower houses, you had cast iron grills, or iron grills, not cast iron, be wrought, I suppose, grills that came down there in front of the timber door in times of attack that you could put down, so to stop those being removed. And then you could batter yourself to the inside with loads of bolts and everything. And this big massive hole, one of those stones that you put nearly your whole fingers into there for a bolt going into the door. Massive big defensive, so you couldn't open the door. But then if you managed to get through the door and you're a super attacker and you come in here onto this, you can see there's very little room. We don't know what was here in the inside, but often in tower houses you ended up in a very small porch when you got through the door. And the idea of that was that was very hard. You were very hard. You couldn't really maneuver yourself. You're easy to be picked off rather than able to come in and bring a whole load of people in with you. And also in tower houses often there's an additional turret for spiral stairs. There's one other castle I think that we found a record of that had a flight of stairs like this, which are straight up. And they're directly built into the stone wall here, so they were built into the wall when the wall was built, not added after. And you can see they're actually cantilevered, so that means that they're completely supported on this wall here. they've got no wall support under here. And these are very unusual. And then there's a latrine or a tunnel running under here out to the outside, which we believe is to take the waste possibly out of the castle. All right?
Yeah, huge.
And we've a big crowd outside, and so far we've been showing people the exterior of the castle to show them the musket loops here, these embrasures that they would have used to defend the castle with. We've been showing them the interior, where you can see the stone cantilevered steps. We've been showing them the interior corbels that would have been holding up the joists for the floors, and we've also been explaining to them the history and the contemporary accounts of the castle through the maps and through all the documentary evidence that we have accumulated so far. Everybody has come down, has been really, really excited about the potential this has for Clonus, haven't they, George?
Yeah.
George, can you give us a little bit on just kind of how this kind of come about at this stage? It's been sitting here. How does this come to this point where we are today?
Well, Shirley and I had a look at it in the springtime, and I had always known it existed here. Always had a feeling that it was an important building, and Shirley and I had a look at it, and she definitely agreed with me. So we applied to a grant from the Heritage Council, and they kindly gave us the grant, and we were able to hire a team of archaeologists to do initial survey work on the structure. And we're waiting for them now to come and measure and assess what the potential of the building is.
And what would be your hopes as we go forward now with this building?
Oh, the hope is that this is a major community archaeology programme, that we get future funding for it, that the entire community be involved in it. We can't thank Fáilte Cluain Ocean enough for the facilities they have given us so far. We know that they're 100% behind us. Clonus Community Forum, the excitement that this has generated, the interest in the volunteers who have taken part in it now in the initial stages. If that keeps going on, this is going to be a wonderful project for Clonus. I can see us having summer archaeology schools, and I can see it generating a huge amount of interest and filling a vacant piece of the jigsaw in the history of this wonderful town of ours.